Hi, I just wondering if you guys can hear me. So, I just wanted to learn something here. It's called hold on. How do you even hide the taskbar? Combine taskbar, hide. I think that's good. I just wanted to have anyway. So I just wanted to do something with my time since I don't have work yet. Just wanted to study the or not study, just play hack the box. It's called hack the box um where you find certain flags in order for you to go through the next challenge. Um it's a fun academy. It's for pen testers or if you want to have a career in cybersecurity, it's also be a good, you know, uh platform for you to study. So I'm done with this topic. So the next topic is so this is learning process topic and the next topic is attention. It can be said that attention is the perception of a specific topic with higher level of interest in order to gather specific data and information from it. Our attention changes with our experience and the information we gain from the content and its clarity. Attention is influenced by your interests, needs, personal attitudes, beliefs, orientations, goals, and experiences. We have already approached this module with a confident attitude, expectation, orientation, and goal. Attention is an independent mental process that takes place subconsciously. So when we talk about concentration, we mean the maintenance of our attention on a specific topic. This means that as long as we are interested in a given topic, we keep working on it until we have achieved the desired result for our well-being. Again, attention goes hand in hand with concentration and focus. We will already know that our attention will begin to decrease at some point and we will no longer able to absorb information effectively. We are getting stuck at this point, forcing ourselves to keep trying and learning ends up with problems of understanding and therefore with higher frustration. Information security is a vast subject as we have already discussed. We will not be able to absorb all the information at once. We will often come back to topics and repeat what we are missing. This is a normal process. We must understand how to divide our attention. There is no general formula that we can use to learn how to divide our attention correctly. This is an individual process that cannot be categorized yet without diving too deep into psychology studies. There are far too many personal characteristics and experiences of each individual to be taken into account. We know that attention takes place at the moment and therefore has limited duration to maintain it. It will be a great advantage to find how long our emotional state and our attention span lasts the longest. We can document it, and after 1 week, we will be able to see an interesting pattern. If we want to approach this one more scientific on a scientific level, we can add the following points to our documentation and get a better insight into it. Okay, I just want to eat a gum because, I'm just trying to suck in all the flavor first, and then we can continue with the work, with the learning. We can document it, and after 1 week, we'll be able to see an interest. Current emotional state: calm, nervous, worried, happy, depressed, relaxed, etc. The previous flow of the day so far, also with one word. Place of work, working hours, duration, sleep, inserted breaks, duration of the breaks, and anything else we can think of. I should start documenting this. These are phases for which we must invest at least 1 hour of our attention. Make it fun, and we will surprise ourselves with discoveries that we make. We can create a simple list or even a table for us to document this quickly and easily. We do we do not have to document it every time we start something, but we could relate to it in the current module, course, and or path. Once we know our attention span is behaving, we will also get an idea of how we can split it up. However, this does not mean that if we have an attention span of 60 minutes, we can divide it between three other topics of 20 minutes each. Remember that amount of attention we can devote to our particular topic depends on too many factors. Experiment with this. Change our place of work, working hours, duration or of work if possible. Listen to different music and try out different things that might help us. There is a so-called Yerkes Dodson law, which describes the cognitive performance as a function of the level of stress nervousness. The performance curve for this is also very individual as it depends strongly on emotional and motivational factors and is divided into four sections. My attention is really not attentioning right now. The most used presentation saw and performance process is the Hebbian version. Lame, healthy, sick, disease. When it comes to comfort, it depends heavily on whether we have healthy level of stress or have already crossed the threshold, leading to a reduction in our performance. It is very it is very individual here where our center is. We are in an area that we are used to and that we consider comfortable. Mostly, these are situation fields in which we have already gained a certain amount of experience and know how to find our way there. When we leave the so called comfort zone, we enter a situation field where we have little or no experience. This kind of uncertainty lowers our ability to think and has a powerful impact on our thought processes, which in turn slows us down. The fact that small children do not exhibit such uncertainty is interesting. They love to try out something new all the time and are not afraid of certain or uncertain of making mistakes. After all, mistakes are essential part of the learning process, and we should always keep it in mind. An interesting question that arises here is why small children, unlike others, do not feel such uncertainty. Let's first look at the following diagram: comfort zone. Comfort zone feels safe and in control. Excuse me. Fear zone lacks self confidence, find excuses, be affected by others' opinions. You're in the fear zone. Learning zone deal with challenges, problems, acquire new skills, extend comfort zone. I should be in the learning zone now. And then growth zone, find purpose and live dreams, set new goals, conquer objectives. Now imagine you're standing at the entrance front of a massive dark forest in the middle of the night. This forest is so dense that no daylight can get through the treetops. To the left and right of this forest, some cliffs are much too steep to climb down. You know, the somewhere in this fire there is the one thing we want to have. Will you go inside and look for it? Common sense would do anything not to. But what if the thing you want is 100 yards further into the forest and is brightly lit? That is the thing that will fulfill you the way we want always wanted to. Would you risk it now? Oh my God, that's so scary. Those who chose to leave the comfort zone would reach their destination faster than they thought they would. They would never have sprinted at such speed before in their lives. Now you would understand the progression between decisions to step out of your comfort zone or stay in it. We will often get into situations where we do not know what to do. This will come again and again, however, we'll always learn something new and will become more comfortable each time. Besides all the effective qualities we have come to No, so far, many obstacles slow us down or even completely prevent us from reaching our goals. Solving specific tasks or acquiring and mastering skills. These are all factors that prevent us from leaving our comfort zone and daring to try something new. Fear. People are often afraid of something new or of something they do not know and cannot evaluate if it could harm them somehow. There are many different types of fear. Fear for us, however, only two are relevant for the time being. First, we need to distinguish between fear in dangerous situations and interpret fear for the learning process. Fear in dangerous situations is necessary and serves to protect one's own life or those of loved ones. However, interpreted fear belongs to an imaginary state of fear. This means that we can feel fear without us being in a life threatening situation, which the human body can even signal as pain. Because the fear is an emotional feeling and therefore subconscious that in extreme cases can even lead to the malfunction of the heart muscles. That's so cool. An excellent example of such a fear behavior in human nature, which everyone knows, is the alien movies in which humanity fights against aliens. In most movies, aliens land on Earth and the relationship problems start. A more common example is when suddenly someone unknown bangs on our front door. At this moment, we are surprised and get scared. After all, we do not know if it is a criminal or someone who needs help. Imaginary fear is directed at events we imagine with consequences that we calculate. However, there is one crucial aspect that we cannot live out. People fear what might happen in the future while not considering the present. Fear in non-life threatening situation lies in the thoughts of the imaginary future, in a future that imagine and imagine ourselves. The more detailed imagine it, the greater the fear becomes. Will Smith has also reported his experience with the confrontation with his fear. Let's watch this 6 minute video.
So, for me, the daily confrontation with fear has become a real practice for me since about three years ago. Um, I went skydiving in Dubai, right? And skydiving is a really interesting confront with fear, right? So I got to stand up. I'm sorry, I got to stand up. I got to stand up. All right. So all your friends, what happens? You go out, how you, oh, sorry, I dropped my thing. So what happens is you go out the night before and you take a drink with your friends and somebody says, yeah, we should go skydiving tomorrow. And you go, yeah, we'll go skydiving tomorrow. Yeah, yeah, and you go, yeah, and everybody goes, yeah, right? And you go home and you by yourself, you're like, right? And you're like, well, yeah, I mean, they was drunk too. Right, so maybe they not maybe I mean we don't have to go, we don't have to do it. So then that night you're laying in your bed and you just keep and you're terrified. You keep imagining over and over again jumping out of an airplane and you can't figure out why you would do that, right? And you're laying there and you have the worst night's sleep of your life, but you still have the hope that your friends were drunk, right? So you wake up the next day and you go, down and you say where you were going to meet and everybody's there. You're like, oh, shit. All right, cool, right? So you get in the van and you don't know that your friends had the same night that you had because they're pretending like they didn't. They're like, yeah, man, my uncle's a Navy SEAL and, this is going to be great. I've been looking forward to this. And you're like, oh, my God, oh, my God. And your stomach is terrible. You can't eat and everything, but you don't want to be the only punk who doesn't jump out of this airplane. So you get there, and then you have this safety brief. And you're standing there, and the guys will tell you, well, if the chute doesn't open, what's going to happen is you're doing, well, why the hell, what could happen? That the chute wouldn't open, right? So you do a thing, and what you do is your first jump, you're attached to a guy who is going, he's going to walk you out. So you go, and you get there, and there's an airplane, and nobody's stopping. Everybody's still going. So you get onto the airplane and you're sitting there, and you know, it's extra because you're sitting on some dude's lap, some stranger. You're sitting on his lap. And it's like, you know, you get trying to make small talk. Yeah, man. So you be jumping with people all the time, huh? Right? You know. So, and then you just want to make sure, yo, you got kids, right? You got people you need to see, right? You just want to make sure he's serious, right? So you get in there. So everything's normal. So you fly and you go up, you go up, you go up, you go up to 14,000 feet, and you notice there's a light. It's red and it's yellow and green, right? So right now the light's red. So then you start thinking at some point the light's going to go green, but you don't know what's going to happen, right? And you wait and it goes yellow and the light goes green and somebody opens the door, and in that moment you realize you've never been in a freaking airplane with the door open. Right? Terror. Oh, sorry, I'm spitting. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. No, terror, 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 right? So you go, and then, you know, if you were smart, you sat in the back so you don't go first, right? And then people start going out of the airplane. And you go, and the guy walks you up to the end of the thing, and you're standing, and your toes are on the edge, and you're looking out down to death. And they say, on three. And they say, one, two. And he pushes you on two because people grab on three, right? Right? And you go, and you fall out of the airplane, and in 1 second, you realize that it's the most blissful experience of your life. You're flying, right? It doesn't feel like falling, right? It's like you actually are kind of held a little bit by the wind, and then you start falling, and there's zero fear. You realize that the point of maximum danger is the point of minimum fear. It's bliss. It's bliss. And you're flying. Right? And you're doing that. And then 20 seconds, 25 seconds, 40 seconds, and you have enough time to just kind of be like, oh, shit, that's that building. That's not like that one. Oh, you can see the ocean. Right? You start doing all of that. And the lesson for me was, why were you scared in your bed the night before? What do you need that fear for? Just don't go. Why are you scared in your bed 16 hours before you jump? Why are you scared in the car? Why could you not enjoy breakfast? What did you need that? The fear is fear of what? You're nowhere even near the airplane. Everything up to the stepping out, there's actually no reason to be scared. It only just ruins your day. You don't have to jump. And then in that moment, all of a sudden, where you should be terrified is the most blissful experience of your life. And God placed the best things in life on the other side of terror. On the other side of your maximum fear are all of the best things in life. You know. So that was sorry. So that was,
No, it's good.
that was it. Yeah, that was my experience with skydiving and fear.
All right.
Imaginary fear is an emotional state that keeps us from having the best experiences and prevents us from moving forward on the desired path. Even if ex- you want to be excellent penetration testers, most beginners are afraid to put their maximum energy into it because of the imaginary fear of failure. This is due to many factors that we will go into shortly. However, if we find ourselves feeling such fear that we should answer the following question in as much detail as possible, which of the mentioned reasons are actually real right now? Another factor that reinforces this imaginary fear and makes us think we will fail is our previous failures. One thing we should remember in advance, write down and hang it on the wall where we can always see it. The difference between a winner and a loser is that the winner has lost more often than the loser. Failure is essential to learning and unavoidable. No one has ever acquired a skill without making a single mistake. It is quite the opposite. Our failures are crucial in our learning curve because they give us a momentum to climb higher. In doing so, we reach a point where we have been before but already know what to expect at higher level. This makes it easier for us to master this uphill climb because we have already slipped once at this point and know that we have to take different paths to get higher. Many people give up here. We think that it as just sitting there hoping we will get higher without moving. Even if a rope is handed to us from above, which we can use to pass the spot, it will not do any good if we do not move. It is in the situation that our excuses come up like, I cannot do this, this is not for me, I do not understand this, etc. Mindset. This comes from our mindset and how we think about situations and certain things. The mindset consists of thought processes we unconsciously acquire to avoid difficult situations or efforts. Such thought processes are also formed during our upbringing. For example, a child constantly criticizes their successes and failures to find it challenging to dare something new. However, the lack of criticism makes the child overconfident, which can lead to misjudgment of their abilities. A mindset can also be described as a set of different, not only culturally conditioned beliefs. An example is a belief that eye contact is a sign of interest and openness everywhere. However, in Japan, this is considered an invasion of privacy is considered rude. It is advisable to be aware of such thought processes. Once we understand our own way of thinking, we have more information to work with us, thus knowing better that we can or would like to change. For example, when we catch ourselves into thinking thoughts like I cannot, we can easily change them from bad feelings to good feelings. The only thing we have to do is to add the word yet. I cannot do this yet. This is not for me yet. I don't understand this yet. This has the effect of stimulating our beliefs that the mindset to pass this obstacle. All obstacles and feelings that prevent us from doing so are temporary. These feelings pass, but the goal remains. Another factor often perceived as an obstacle is comparing skill, talent, and passion. However, we have already learned what constitutes talent. Talent is strongly developed skill with high efficiency. Skill is ability to manage or solve something well. Passion is an emotional commitment to a particular area. If we take a closer look at these definitions, we will see that they are interrelated, mutually supported, and not, as many believe, holding them back. We all have different talents, thought patterns that make some tasks easier to understand and others a little more complicated, skills we learn, and the passion and dedicated to achieve the desired goals. All this depends on the goals that we want to achieve, not to the components that help us achieve it. Pressure can also be described as mental stress, the totality of all detectable external and internal influences. Psychological pressures affect people based on situation. They make demands on their resources. The term stress therefore describes a characteristic of conditions and not characteristics of people. In contrast to the term pressure, the term stress describes the non-specific reaction of the organism to any form of pressure. The occurrence of stress requires a sensory perception of stress, triggering stimulus and nervous transmission of such a stimulus to stimulus processing region of the body. Accompanying the symptoms on the biochemical level are usually the release of stress hormones such as catecholamines, glucocorticoids, and other secretions. A distinction is made between internal and external influences. The internal influence includes beliefs of our mindset, but also our attitudes. Such an attitude or character trait is always a two-sided sword that brings advantages and disadvantages. One of such traits can be perfectionism, for example, which awakens in us the desire to do everything flawless, perfectly, and above all quickly. It is challenging to dampen such character traits because they occur unconsciously and are reflected in the form of emotion. For example, if we feel uncomfortable and overwhelmed by a task, we unconsciously think we are not up to task. Often we also ask ourselves, why should we continue with it at all? Since our subconscious governs it, it is necessary to put our brains in different mode, forcing our brain to function differently. A specific category of activity that forces our brain to behave differently is called creativity. One such creative activity is making music or drawing. The reason that we force the brain to invent something new, at the same time we cannot focus on that mindset while developing something new, as this requires completely different thought processes than dealing with a task. If we find ourselves in a situation where we do not know what to do, we can pursue some activities requiring us to do something new. It does not matter what we do, but rather it requires our creativity. External influences are what others think and say about us. It can also be that strict deadlines are set for us that we must adhere to. However, it can also be that someone tries to influence us negatively. Many people do this to push their own ego, which has little to do with us and our abilities. Such people often claim to be better at something than we are. However, we think back to ourselves to the mindset we discussed earlier. We can also attach the word yet to these sentences and see how quickly we will overtake them. Knowing that we only feel verbally attacked by people we attribute a high value to is essential. For example, there is a big difference between a stranger on the street calling us an idiot and one of our loved ones. So if we think highly of the persons or their ability, we value their statement highly and often even places them above our own opinions. Otherwise, we care about what other person says. We can eliminate external influences more easily than many might think. All we need is a clearly defined goal. If we have such a goal that we follow passionately, hardly anyone will talk us out of it. It is even less likely if we know that we can achieve this goal. We should remember the following. Only the person who has taken the exact same journey as you can evaluate you and your decisions. Everything else is only assumption. Learning to ask the right question is an art and a critical skill. It does not matter what situation we are in or whether we're discussing technical or all non-technical topics. However, many people do not know the difference between wrong and right questions. Most do not even know what a question is. At the moment, we define questions, see their purpose, and gather information, facts that we which we can draw conclusions, make assumptions that will guide our decision, thus our future course of action. However, this opinion will soon change. Apart from that, questions often serve for orientation. By this, we mean that we can get an overview based on questions we ask, which helps us find more information on the topic we are concerned with. Questions represent a view of the situation before we take the step and move on our way. Metaphorically speaking, we use them to see where we want to be or can take our next step. Especially in the field of cybersecurity and above penetration testing, we should keep the following in mind. The most important, most difficult thing in any situation is not to search for the right answer, but to search for the right question. A good example is that if an answer to a task is already known, the task is no longer necessarily difficult to solve. Many people believe that searching for an answer is one of the most difficult activities that accompany them throughout their lives. However, finding the answer becomes the opposite when the question is asked correctly. It is much more challenging to ask the right questions when we do not understand the concepts or do not have any knowledge of a particular area in the first place. We have all we have all been in a situation where we suddenly did not know what to do and could not even understand what to start with to figure out the situation. At this point, we should choose 3 to 5 such situations from our lives and write down one question for each of them. This can be any situation. We can take difficult and obscure situations, write them down, questions for them. Throughout this question, throughout this section, we will learn a model that will help us see the difference between quality of the questions we are asking and the questions we needed to ask. In doing so, we also quickly become aware of model's effectiveness and how much it would be have helped us at the time. This is the best way to judge the effectiveness based on personal life experiences. Therefore, we should not skip this step, right? down 3 to 5 situations from our lives now. I have my journal here. Let me log first. First of all, we need to solve a certain myth about questions before we continue at this point. We need to be clear about the following. There are no good or bad questions, end of story. Let us examine the following question and clear up this myth once and for all. What are good questions? Let us assume that the answer is XYZ and this question good or bad. It does not matter and is irrelevant. Good or bad is a state we attribute to the question. What influence does this condition have on the answer? None. The answer remains XYZ. If we do something that does not affect the result, it does not matter and is therefore completely irrelevant. This is the same as asking questions. What happens if I jump into the water? To this question, we then add the following factors. The water is cold, hot, dark, transparent. How does the water condition affect the result when we jump into the water? It does not. Apart from all the consequences, we get wet either way. The interesting thing is that with the condition, even we have even come closer to the actual issue because we used it to describe the state of the water. This is much closer connected than the state of the question. How do we influence the result if we set the state of the question and say that it is good question? We would not. People use the states good and bad to describe the profit or loss they expect from the question. If people get an answer that benefits them, then classify the question as a good one. However, if the question leads to a loss or let us say does not help the person, is the question bad? Actually not. The state we give to the question does not affect the answer. The state attributed to the question belongs to the answer or the result. The answer can be some extent good or bad, but not necessarily depending on our goal and whether we're getting closer to it. If we come closer to the result, answer result, moving away from the less ideal goal is good. We can assign two states to a question, thus we would describe it as a rough question or precise question. A rough question would be, for example, how can I hack X? A precise question would be, how can I survive the service SMB service to identify its existing user account? As we see through these examples, this state of precision can greatly affect the result and the answer. Nevertheless, a precise question is still not good because good or bad are relevant states. Irrelevant states. We know that they do not influence the result of the answer or the answer. Questions in general, we use questions in everyday life more often than we realize at a glance. On average, we ask between 35 questions per minute. Of course, this depends on the situation. We can experiment, set a timer for a minute, and observe our thoughts during this period. Every time we notice we ask ourselves something or something is unclear to us, we make a mark on a piece of paper until the timer runs out. To do this experiment, we need to take a pen, piece of paper, and set a timer. From now on, the timer should run. 9:32. Questions can be asked in different ways because all questions are adapted to circumstances, situation, desired goals. Questions are an essential part of the thinking process in which links are created between Information notes in our brains that is also fixed and unavoidable part of the learning process. Removing questions, therefore, also reduces the learning process enormously. If we do not question anything when we read content, it is like cooking a recipe without information about how to prepare it. Because a recipe contains a big question from the ground up. How do I cook this dish? Two main points are worked through each recipe: ingredients, method of preparation. Learning materials content can be equated with the ingredients. The preparation method can therefore be correlated with questions because questions determine which step we will take next and define our approach. Finally, how to cook describes the preparation method describes when, how, and what need to be added and processed to get closer to the finished dish. The cook, the cook or author's approach may have worked 100%, but anyone who have ever cooked from a recipe knows that a written down recipe alone will not make the dish tasty. We must prepare and practice using means of our disposal. A professional cook typically has considerable experience, often uses special ingredients that can be very expensive, and we do not know any other use for them. Therefore, this is an essential example that copying and imitating what has been shown and explained will not always produce the desired result. By now, the timer should have run out, and now we should add up the number of questions that came to mind while reading during this period. For comparison, at least 10 questions could have been asked. If more than 10 questions came up for us, all the better. The more questions we ask, the better understanding we develop of the whole picture. To do this, let us briefly imagine the situation where we need to open a lock and follow a methodology most people use today. The question can be concluded from this situation is, how do you open this lock? The lock. The question is unnecessary in the standard door lock because we have enough experience and knowledge to open the door with the appropriate key. In this case, the key is known tool that we use to unlock or lock the door. The situation is different if we have the vault in front of us and requires combination of numbers. What question do we need to ask to get answers that will allow us to find the right tools or method and use them accordingly? Once we know the goal to which we are attracted, willingness, we can use various principles such as the Pareto principle or Occam's razor to develop our talents. Talent skill make our decision making to pass the obstacles to fall across our path by asking the right questions. Questioning. We can all ask questions. However, not many know how to ask the right questions because some significant differences in friends can greatly affect the answers we want to receive. The goal of the question is one of the most important aspects that determine our approach and the question we ask. Let us look at a few things that we currently use in our everyday lives, such as goals that we have just talked about, can be, for example, to understand the reason for an event, to experience something completely new, understand the way something works, present, and to predict the effect of an event for the future, completely new, understand the way something works, present. Every question is based on three aspects, which we build questions every day: origin, process, result, goal. These questions can be of any kind and can relate duration, reason, action, reaction, location, specifications, and many others. They can be as varied as our imagination. Also, almost every, I think these are all just methodology. I don't think that this is the model we may. Frustration, emotional, I can handle frustration. Vision, skills, incentives, resources, action plan, organization. Without vision, you have confusion. Without skills, you have anxiety. Without incentives, you have gradual change, and without resources, you have frustration. This is me without resources, without frustration. If you have everything but not an action plan, false start. What's this activity? In order to see your progress, tools with data is compared, including specific time window between learning process. In other words, I'm bored. I've already finished this. Linux fundamentals. We need to learn this. Challenge is like a terminal. Man means manual. And bash. Command. System information. Who am I? Returns user's identity. Excuse me. Are we getting activity here? I've answered some. Hmm. I feel like I'm really demotivated. I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I have a purpose. I'm thinking of eating, but I don't want to get fat. That's enough studying.